Let's be real. When you start a business, branding can feel like this huge, intimidating thing, and you're like, there's no way I can afford to invest in this. You're told you need a visual identity and a consistent voice and a brand strategy, but then you find yourself spending hours picking colors or fonts on Pinterest and downloading yet another free font that kind of works, but you can't commit to it. And honestly, I get it because I've been there too. And also, as a designer, I change my mind constantly. But back when I first started my own business, I thought branding was just about making things look pretty or just a logo. And here's the truth, it's so much more than that. So today we're breaking it down. I'm sharing the branding basics every new entrepreneur needs to know, not the stuff that's going to overwhelm you or cost you thousands of dollars, but the simple, powerful pieces you can start building right now to make your business feel more cohesive and professional, even on a DIY budget. Whether you're still side hustling or going all in, this episode will help you create a brand that actually works, one that feels like you, and connects with the people you want to reach. So let's dive in. I am on a journey to get better in all areas of my life, and I want to do it with you. Welcome to the Being Better Everyday podcast, where we dig deep into all the things a millennial mom needs to know. From how to juggle your passions with your full-time job, to asking the hard questions about hormones and health, and learning from one another along the way. I am Julie Wenslick, and as a mom, business owner, and corporate girly, sometimes life can feel like a lot. So join me in the journey of being better every day, where we create habits and routines that support your life, create calm in the chaos, and put the you back in your everyday. Grab those headphones, put on your shoes, and join me on a walk while we get started with today's episode. Again, welcome back to the Being Better Everyday podcast. Let's start here. Most people think that branding is just a cute logo and a color palette, and I used to think that too. Back when I was running my planner business, I spent hours scrolling Pinterest for color inspo and trying out free fonts on Canva, and I would constantly change my color palette based on the season because, again, I'm super indecisive and I love making things pretty. And I thought if my Instagram looked cohesive, I had nailed branding. But here's what I learned the hard way. Branding isn't just how your business looks, it's how it makes your customers feel. It's the gut reaction people have when they see your posts, visit your site, and open an email from you. It is also why I will be switching to Showit eventually for my own web design and branding business because honestly, Squarespace is just too restrictive. And that feeling doesn't happen by accident. It's built intentionally and through brand strategy. So, what is brand strategy? Brand strategy is the foundation of your brand. It's the picture of how your business shows up and how it connects to your ideal audience. It's not just about design trends or colors that you love, it's about clarity, consistency, and collaboration with your designer or having somebody in your corner helping you through this. At its core, brand strategy answers questions like who are you here to serve? What are you here to what are your like mission and values? What is your unique personality and voice? And what do you want people to feel when they interact with you? And how and where will you show up online? Now, this is like the less sexy part of branding. I get that. And what I often do with my clients is I kind of have taken this idea from somebody else and adjusted it. But I have, for all of my current clients, a Debsado, which is my CRM form, that actually allows them to go through this exercise on their own using AI to help create their brand vision, values, and purpose. So, for example, the first question on the questionnaire is brand purpose, and it allows for them to define, in a really clear, easy way, what does their business do? Who is their ideal audience? What is their dream for growing this business? And we use AI to then kind of craft that message and give a good output. So for example, my brand purpose is P&W Designs exists to help women-owned businesses build a brand and an online presence that works as hard as they do. Through branding, web design, and SEO, the focus is creating high-impact solutions that don't just look good, but they get results. Every business deserves an online presence that actually works, one that brings visibility and credibility. This isn't just another design studio, it's a business growth partner for women who want direct, no fluff approach because, hey, I'm an Enneagram 8, and a brand that they can be proud of. The goal is to take an overwhelm out of the branding and marketing by connecting the dots so that every piece of your online presence works together to build something sustainable and impactful. So, again, that's my brand purpose. That's the example. And then we go through things like brand mission, brand vision, your short elevator pitch, I help statements, your brand voice, and again, like kind of helping to craft how your value and your vision and your voice sound. Why that's so important. I actually make all of my clients go through this, whether they're branding or web design clients, if they do not already have this written out for themselves, because it also helps train AI. So I am able to take that, train my AI, and then every time it creates content or it creates information for me, it's using that as its backing for that information. So definitely that's where strategy comes in first, right? My branding pricing does reflect that I'm not hand-holding you through this process and giving you a document that will help you get your answers that you need, and then you give it back to me. It is extremely important to have it defined, to have know that information, because it also helps me create your brand visual identity. So again, that's the brand strategy side of it. It's working together with your visuals to make your messaging work to attract the right people and build trust. So what actually goes into like the visual identity side of branding? Often people will think it's just the logo, or if I have like one logo, I'm good, I have my brand. And that's not true, right? Because your brand needs to be flexible depending on the platform and the median. So ideally, your brand has a logo suite. It has a primary logo, a secondary logo, submarks, and icons for different uses. I will say for my business right now, and I know this is common with other designers as well. I can see other people's brands really easily, but seeing my own is like really, really difficult. So although I have a logo and I have a logo mark, I don't like, I'm not in love with them. And maybe someday I will be, but they work and I have them. Color palette is next, and that is a set of brand colors that work together across digital and print. And again, depending on your web design platform, you may be restricted to three or four. You may be more flexible and able to go up to five or six, but you're going to have like a core number of colors, five or six usually, that work together, that are accessible for web design, that will look great on social media and kind of fit your target market. Typography is the fonts. So every single one of my clients gets a header font, a subheader, a cursive usually, and a body font. Depending on the brand, like I think most women entrepreneurs definitely have some sort of script font that they utilize. I love using a script font, but I am working with two men websites this fall, and I don't think either of them will have a script font. It did kind of depend on your target audience and your vibe, but certainly having a header, subheader, and a body font. I do not always use free fonts for that because I want it to be unique and individual. And there are certain fonts in the design industry that everyone uses, and it's just like you're not unique then. So it is important, especially for those who may be more picky about that kind of stuff. Brand messaging, we already talked about. Visual style, again, is the photography, the graphics, design elements that support your vibe. So having a mood board, having stock photos that like, so for example, when I find stock photos on Canva that I love, I put them in a folder called PNW something, brand stock maybe. So not only do I have obviously my own brand photos that I've taken with my cell phone, but I use consistent brand stock photos that I think fit my vibe as well. And then I kind of create and save a folder of them on Canva because most of the stuff I create is on Canva. And yes, I know I could use Adobe, but Canva is just easier. I use Adobe and Procreate for like actual branding work. I'm talking about creating social media graphics or banners or flyers or whatever, or portfolios, etc. I use Canva. Another part of branding is obviously being consistent across the platforms. Your website, your social, your emails, and your Pinterest should all feel cohesive. You should be using the same fonts, the same colors, the same imaging. I can't tell you how many clients I've taken on that I'll be like, okay, give me your brand guide. And then their website does not match that. And I'm like, why? And oftentimes it's because, like, example, Squarespace, you need code to use a custom font. And if they've worked with a designer who doesn't know how to do that custom code, then they're just picking a different font, and that's not going to give you that cohesion that you are looking for. So, again, all of those pieces align is what really helps your brand become instantly recognizable. People don't feel like they have to guess what you do or if they're going to fit in with you. Your brand kind of communicates that before you ever say a word. You can certainly DIY some of this. I will give you some tips on how to do that, but obviously I'm here too. So branding isn't just about looking good, it's about creating an experience people remember and come back for. And I am your business bestie hoping to help you do that. So, a couple things. There are some branding mistakes that new entrepreneurs make, and these are things that all of us are guilty of. So, mistake number one is copying big brands in your industry. It's so easy to fall into this trap, especially when you're just starting out, where you see a competitor's Instagram aesthetic or website and think, I just want it to look like that because I really like it. Here's the problem: what works for them probably won't work for you because it's not your individual and unique voice. They have been building that brand for years. They've invested in the strategy, professional design, and photography, and their audience and offerings are gonna be specific to them. And so you may take inspiration from them, but copying their work and their look gives you a risk of building a brand that feels generic or disconnected from who you actually are. So when you are thinking about your brand, and when we look at Pinterest, when we look at inspiration, make sure you're also focusing inward and starting with defining your brand, mission, vision, values, ideal audience, building a mood board around what speaks to you, your vibe, your goals, and your audience. Make it unique to you. If somebody is looking for what you're serving and there's a big brand doing the same thing, right? If you look like them, they're just going to go with the big brand. You need to have your own unique voice and your own story and your own elements. Another thing that is common as a mistake, especially as you're learning your own voice and your own kind of aesthetic, is consistently changing visuals. As a designer, I know everyone else feels this too. It's just really hard because you do like changing things and you do get inspired. I have changed my fonts a million times. I test a fresh color palette. And again, I'm going to be doing that with my website transition from Squarespace to show it because I will have more flexibility. It does create some confusion around brand consistency, brand recognition. If you're constantly changing your visuals, your audience can't connect the dots of who you are and they won't recognize your posts at a glance. I definitely know a creator that does this because she just flies by the seat of her pants when it comes to branding and what looks good for her at the time. If I'm going to picture her business in my head, I can't picture the vibe because her vibe is constantly changing. And that's where it's super important to keep the same vibe, keep that consistency because it will build trust. So when you're building your own simple brand kit, stick to, 4 to 5 main colors. I kind of stick to 2 to 3 and then have some outliers, if that makes sense. Your core header, subheading fonts, keep those consistent. Have your consistent logo suite where it would be seen across the board. And again, consistency beats perfection. So even if you're like, oh, I don't know for sure or whatever, just don't overthink it, but make sure that it does speak to your core audience and who you are. Because for me, I want to have a little bit of an edgier vibe to my stuff, which I'm going to be working on with Show It. And is because I am more of a direct person. I am more of a no fluff, tell you how it is person. And I want my brand to reflect that because that's who I am. So, mistake number three is forgetting again about your audience. I've talked about this. This is huge. So many entrepreneurs design a brand identity around their preferences, colors that they love, fonts that they think are cute, or messaging that feels good to them. But make sure that it isn't just about you, it's about the people you serve. Your copy should be reflective of that as well on your website. It's one of the hardest things for me as a designer because I want to make my clients happy. But a really good example of this is if your audience is made up of corporate professionals, a pastel boho vibe is probably not the vibe, right? Nor I'm thinking of the person I'm working with right now. She has a super editorial vibe. Her branding is all black and white. But again, she's a very direct person. She is a no fluff person, and her branding fits that vibe, and she will attract the less soft people because of it, if that makes sense. So again, another example is if you're targeting creative entrepreneurs, a super formal tone to your messaging isn't gonna resonate. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to create something you don't like. It just means you have to create with your audience in mind. Think about your ideal audience, what visually appeals to them, what kind of tone and voice makes them feel seen. How do you want them to feel when you interact with the brand? Setting that expectations of how you communicate should be reflective in your brand messaging as well. So if you're going to try to DIY this, if you have zero budget and if you're starting your own business, then, think of it as you can start on your own. Obviously, as somebody who does branding, I'm like, no, don't. But at the same time, I understand that not everyone's going to have the budget to go all in right away. So, a couple things. Here's how you'd start on your own. Again, choose 2 to 3 brand colors that reflect your vibe and your ideal audience. Narrow it down. Keep 2 to 3 primary colors and 1 to 2 accents that feel aligned to your brand personality. You can use tools like coolors.co, that's COOLORS.co, which auto generates palettes. You can use Pinterest to create a mood board or images of things that feel like your brand. They don't have to be related to your business. A lot of times I tell clients to just pull things that like speak to them. You can use like Canva auto generated palettes as well, and certainly just like Google it. But your colors aren't just about your logo, it's about showing up on your website, social media, marketing materials, and packaging. One of the common mistakes that I see is like I worked with a photographer, for example, and all of her colors were extremely unsaturated. And when it comes to website accessibility, it really isn't going to allow you to show up a lot with your colors because they wouldn't be able to be seen from an accessibility perspective. So making sure you have some colors that are saturated and some colors that are unsaturated. And again, that gets a little bit more technical, but you can't have like everything super saturated if you're wanting to layer colors because it just will not work from an accessibility perspective. There is some free accessibility checkers online too, so that is something to think about is if you are really in your brand and your website, like you need to check for website accessibility as well. From a fonts perspective, so inconsistent fonts, again, picking 1 to 2 fonts and sticking with them. Inconsistent fonts are one of the fastest ways for your brand to feel chaotic. So pick one font for headlines and one for body text at a minimum. If you're using Canva, obviously they have free font pairings. I even have a font board on my Pinterest, and that will there's a ton of like free Canva font pairings. There's a ton of Google pairings. There's a ton of free Adobe fonts. So, for example, I'm looking FontJoy generates font pairings online for free as well. And so that's a great way for you to get ideas. But if you are using, for example, like Squarespace, they have built-in fonts. Like start there, right? If you know your website is going to be Squarespace, you don't know how to custom code things. So you're going to need to start with looking at fonts that are available on Squarespace versus fonts that are available on Canva. There's also a ton of free fonts you can download and then upload directly into Canva. So if you're like, I like XYZ font, but it's not in Canva, usually you can download it and do that from there. Again, making sure you're consistent about it, but it is something that you can kind of use your tools to do it on your own. The branding objectives, again, how you want your messaging to look, I would encourage you to use ChatGPT and have ChatGPT help you define your brand mission, vision, values, and really make sure that it sounds like you and your story. ChatGPT understand what your business story is and why you started your business and why it's important to you. And then finally put it all together in some sort of like simple style guide on Canva. There are 1 page Canva docs, brand docs. You just can kind of like search for a brand template and you will be easily able to find it where you can put in all of your colors with your hex codes, your fonts, your logo variations. The logo side of things, I would encourage you not to DIY. If that means you don't have a logo for a while and you just use your business name, then do that. I think it's the easiest way for you to look cheap is to DIY your logo if you're not just using like your name and your brand font because as a designer, you can tell immediately when somebody DIYs their logo. And don't use AI. Again, brand objectives, voice tone, all of this should be in that brand document. Now, it'll get you a start once you want to elevate, once you want to, book higher end clients. That's where DIY branding is just a great starting point, but it's not going to be always, the thing that you can do long term. So, signs that you've outgrown your DIY. One, you feel embarrassed about sharing your website or Instagram because it doesn't feel like you. That's a problem. Your branding doesn't match the level of services or your pricing. Branding definitely goes into pricing. You're consistently tweaking your new colors, your new logo, or your new fonts every couple of months. That's a sign that you need maybe a greater strategy or a designer with the secondary eye. Or you're ready to scale and want a more polished, intentional presence. Again, that's where branding is really going to be important to work with somebody outside. And that's where I come in. So I help solopreneurs like you go from piece together DIY brand to a cohesive professional brand that actually works. Every client of mine gets a 20-page brand document as well as a single serve, like one pager. They have brand elements, they have multiple logo variations in light and dark, they have consistency across colors, and the ability to show up and see what their socials will look like with their new branding. We don't overcomplicate it. We create a thoughtful strategy rooted in goals, a visual identity that feels aligned and confident, and a brand that can grow with you. So your brand should feel like a sigh of release and not another to-do list, and that is where I come in. So again, hopefully this gives you a little bit of a look into what it could look like to, kind of create a more cohesive brand identity and visual identity. It doesn't have to feel so overwhelming, and you don't need a $10,000 logo package to start showing up professionally. And you definitely don't need to copy what everyone else is doing. What you do need is a clear sense of who you are, who you're serving, and how you want people to feel when they interact with your business. Start there, build one piece at a time, and give yourself permission to keep refining as you grow. If you're ready for more support and building a brand that only looks beautiful but actually works strategically to grow your business, head over to buypwdesigns.com, and I'd love to help you create something intentional and powerful. And if this episode gave you the, oh, I could totally do this, then screenshot it, share it with your stories, and tag me at buypwdesigns, and I can't wait to cheer you on. And that's a wrap on today's episode of the Being Better Everyday podcast. Thank you for listening. I truly appreciate each listener. If you've enjoyed the conversation, I'd love if you would leave a rating and review or share it with your bestie to help me reach more women looking to ask the hard questions and live above that status quo. To see any visuals, head over to my YouTube channel. Links, socials, and resources mentioned can be found in today's show notes. If you're looking for more, you can find me on Instagram at julie.pwdesigns, sharing the behind the scenes of my everyday life as a millennial mom, corporate girly, and small business owner. Until next time, keep on taking one step at a time towards your version of being better every day.